We can now go across to Beijing and speak to correspondent Yena Lee. Yena, good evening to you. What came out of this meeting today?
Well, the two leaders signed more than 20 deals on tech and trade and a joint declaration on a multipolar world order. This text included a criticism of military actions around the world. It was a not-so-subtle reference to the U.S.'s military actions in Venezuela and Iran. The two leaders called out, I quote, treacherous military strikes against other countries, the hypocritical use of negotiations as cover for preparing said strikes, the assassination of leaders, the provocation of regime change and the brazen kidnapping of national leaders for trial. However, we didn't see much in this text about the force of Siberia 2 pipeline in their statement. That's that 2,600-kilometer pipeline that would bring gas from Russia overland to China. There was some expectation simmering that the two sides would finally come up with a timeline, with a route, etc. But the joint declaration only speaks about continuing partnerships in the field of energy and deepening mutually beneficial collaboration in the areas of coal, oil and gas. So the plans for this pipeline bringing Russian gas have stalled over price in recent months. And though Moscow continues to push for it, Beijing clearly has the upper hand in the negotiations and is far more cautious in its messaging before committing to such a huge project.
Yena, Vladimir Putin is in China for the second time in some 8 months. How close are these two sides really, and have these ties intensified since the war in Ukraine?
Absolutely. The two presidents call each other best friends. The two men boast a personal relationship, and the leaders have indeed met over 40 times, partly because they've been in power for so long and partly because these two have brought together their countries closer than ever before. So this is indeed a special relationship. In 2022, Moscow and Beijing signed this no-limits partnership, as it's called. And we've seen the result of this new upgraded level of friendship, of relationship between the two countries since the war in Ukraine. Russia may be isolated on the international stage, but China is still its biggest consumer of fossil fuels. And it's not just about gas and oil. China continues to sell electronics and cars, replacing the Western brands that left after sanctions. So bilateral trade has more than doubled between 2020 and 2024, reaching 237 billion US dollars that year. Numbers have cooled down since because energy prices have gone down, but the big picture remains the same. And the big picture is this: trade is not only booming between the two neighboring countries, but it's become increasingly unequal. Moscow has become economically dependent on Beijing, and this really does add complexity to their relationship.